Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Stephanie and Keith. And of course, I am Stephanie and we have Keith here. Keith, what do you want to say to the audience?
I want to say hello to everyone.
So today, me and Keith are going to be discussing from a male's perspective, what type of effect does it have on a man when the woman changes throughout the relationship? So, for instance, a woman might gain a little weight, okay? Or her career, she might change career-wise. She might have been a stay-at-home mom, and now she's out building a career, and just life changes. Keith, what type of effect does that have on the man?
Depending on the man and depending on the change, it could make their relationship stronger. It could devastate it to the point there is no relationship.
Okay.
My perspective is, and that's just me, but I think it's pretty widely accepted. Every 10 years of a person's life, you evolve into something else.
Yeah.
And that's every 10 years. I'm not talking about every 10 years of marriage or a relationship. From 0 to 10, there's a dramatic change. From a baby that if you just left it there would perish to a child that can pretty much take care of itself in a household as long as the provisions in that household are there. They can use the phone to call for emergency assistance. They can cook. They can clean. They can read. They can study. You know, they can go and do errands and come home. Big change in those 10 years. From 10 to 20, same thing. You're going from a child to an adult that can be self-sustaining because that's possible at 20. From 20 to 30, another big change. Usually that's where you solidify relationships. You probably are dealing with children of your own or children of somebody else's that you have a relationship with. That's when you're trying to find your way in a career, you know, trying to figure out where it is you want to live, to be able to prosper, to grow, either yourself or your family. From 30 to 40, 40 to 50, all that, every 10 years. So if every 10 years you evolve into something else, naturally you're going to evolve into something else every 10 years in your relationship. If you got married at 25, by the time you're 35, you're somebody else in every way. Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Only thing you can hope in a relationship is you have evolved in a way that is positive to your partner. And they have evolved. The man has evolved in a way that's still positive to you.
Okay. So let me pick your brain real quick. Say you have a woman who, when you got with her, she was very outspoken, very, you know, she was up for whatever, right? Pretty easygoing. It's like pretty much whatever you want. And then as time developed and as she grew, she started to change and find herself and start to be more in tune with herself. And let's just say she changes spiritually. Spiritually, she starts to get into the church. Her beliefs start to kind of change. Her values start to kind of change. And she's really becoming a different person. What do you think about that effect on a man? Because I've heard a lot of men be like, oh, I don't want no Bible lady now. Or, you know, they be scared, especially when it comes to the church and to God. They be scared. Some of them are fear losing their spouses to the church, you know, or they changing so much to where they don't mesh or click anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts of that would be, if you pick the right man, and the man has a lot of the qualities that women want, 4 qualities women want in every man: a protector, a provider, a prophet, and a priest. Well, if your man has the qualities of a priest, then you are able to provide some of that spiritual nourishment, some of that spiritual direction that woman craves, and she can get partially from a church, but she should also be getting partially that from you as the man. If you can't provide that at all, then she's getting 100% of that from the church. And it's up to the individual man if now he can be accepting of that, because now he basically has another man that is implanting things in his woman that she's bringing into their household, but that other man will live.
Because, you know, some of those things will probably look like You know, whereas say you guys are not married, but you guys been together forever, but you're not married. And so now she has evolved in a way to where she's more spiritually inclined with herself, to where she might say, I don't want to be sexually active anymore until we're married. And so that can be one of those changes that might come about. What kind of impact would that have on the man? Do you think that he'll be ready to leave the relationship because he's not getting his needs met like he once was? Or do you think it will possibly help to evolve the relationship in the sense to where he might be willing to go ahead and get married?
Well, it depends on the man. But a real man is not going to have a long-term live-in relationship with a woman without having that discussion long before it comes to a head. That's something that needs to be discussed before it's ready to blush. That's why you don't wait till something is basically about to collapse before you decide to address it. That's why a real man that has the qualities of a real man, that's already been discussed. You've already either agreed to, or he's agreed to, or you come to a common agreement about what's going to happen at a certain time frame of the relationship. Now, if the man reneges on that, then the woman's got to make, some other kind of, how would you call it, other accommodation. But maybe she won't. Maybe this man possesses so much that she's willing to give him all the time he needs because she knows in reality there are very few men like this, and my chances are slim to none of getting another one, so I just got to ride it out.
Okay, because I have seen where women use this to speed up the proposal or whatnot, to whereas if they start holding back sexually, then it's like, I'm not having sex until, we get married. Then does that man change and say, okay, well, I'm ready to get married, so that he can get his needs met? Or do you think that a man is quicker to walk away?
If a man has all the qualities that woman wants in abundance, then he got all the qualities in abundance a lot of women want, most women want. And he can go get that sexual need met all day long, every day, from women who know he got a woman, who know he got to leave that woman, who know he's probably going to marry that woman, but because he brings so much to the table in their life that they're willing to accept 30% of what he has to bring. And they're willing to accept and provide for his sexual needs. And he can basically go 10 years without having sex with that woman because he's not depriving himself of sex. She is.
We think got juicy, y'all. Y'all hear this? What I'm hearing is, so one, it will not speed up the proposal. Two, it's probably most likely going to have that man, especially if he got all of these qualities and he can go pull another woman or whatnot, he's probably going to lean more towards to getting it from elsewhere. And so you have, in essence, created a bigger problem, right? Because now your man is stepping out because of something you refuse to give, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, and so the odds are more higher to that happening than a man giving in and saying, well, let me go and marry this girl, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So, ladies, I hope you're taking notes now so we can see how these men be thinking for real, for real. So, that was good. That was good. All right, let's try another scenario. Say, for instance, you were a woman, and one of the things that drew you to this particular woman was her figure, her body, the way she made you feel when you looked at her. And then over the years, you guys start having babies, life slows down, and she starts to change. Her figure starts to change, and she starts to, gain a little weight. Is that a problem for most men? Or is that something that you think that they become accustomed to, and that's something that they eventually look past?
Depends on the man.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the man. That's an individual characteristic because hopefully he liked her for more than just her body.
Yes, yes.
It also depends on what that woman's individual mindset of being fit is. A woman can have, if I met a woman like this, she wasn't a friend of mine, I just met her. At the time I met her, this woman had 6 children, and she looked like a fitness model. I don't know if she worked out. I don't know anything about her. She just basically was talking to a guy that I know. And he didn't really have that many qualities that were that positive to me because I knew him. I didn't know her.
Okay.
He didn't have 6 kids by her, but she had 6 kids. I didn't even know if they came from a former marriage, but I know they came from former relationships because he didn't have 6 kids with her. He might have had some, but not 6.
Okay.
And she ended up leaving him because she had the type of look and she worked in the type of environment where eventually she gave in to a guy who had a lot more going for him than this guy I knew, who had very little going for him. I was surprised they were together at all. But, you know, he got blessed to a degree to be with a woman who basically could easily do better than him. And I never saw her act out in a way, act arrogant. You know, basically she really didn't have a whole lot to say when he brought her around. Absolutely gorgeous, from face to figure to everything. It shocked me when they told me she had 6 kids. But she basically was a person who was just what I call very, very unusual, an anomaly. That's not the usual woman with 6 kids, but it's some people. But to your question, it really depends on the man, because every man is different as to how he feels about that. Because most men, unless they live in a gym, watch their diet, take a lot of supplements, and are blessed to have, you know, no diseases, beset their bodies are going to change over that period of time too.
Yes, this is true. This is true. Men bodies are changing, but yet they give the women a hard time because theirs are changing. But back to your point with the lady who had the 6 kids, my mother-in-law is the same way. I just think it's just genes. My mother-in-law is the same way. She has 6 kids, and she's in her 60s. And honey, if she don't look good, she's very small, very petite, and she doesn't work out. It's just genes. It's just something natural that it's just natural for her. Whereas me, myself, I had one baby and it blew me up. And my husband brought me a recumbent bike. It was my birthday coming up or some holiday was coming up. And he said, baby, I got the perfect gift for you. And he brought me a recumbent bike. He say I asked for it, and maybe I did, but when he brought that bike in the house, I felt some type of way like, what are you trying to say? But I am so glad that he did because it started me to working out and taking better care of myself. And so now, like, a lot of people look at me and they can't imagine that I once, had gained so much weight because I'm only, about 5 feet. You can imagine I was like 198 pounds before delivering my son. So you pictured the weight on me. Didn't look nothing like Stephanie anymore. And my husband, he was very supportive. During the pregnancy, he told me, you look good. Don't you worry about it. Even though everybody was giving me a hard time, it was people even walking up to me talking about, is Stephanie here? And I'm like, this is me. That's how different I looked from myself. And so I was really insecure around that time, but he really was very supportive and helped me feel good about this process. And then he actually gave me the boost to get into the gym and start working on myself so I can get back to myself, which is one of the best things I could have did for myself. I wonder if I had stayed like that, would that have been a problem within the relationship in the long run? Or is a man most likely to support you through those changes and still love you? How often do we see that?
Every change to a man in a woman is a consideration. Is it all the way up to a problem? Depending on the man, depending on what the change is, sure could be. Is it a deal breaker? It really depends on how many things that man loves about that woman. If he started to actually have to list them, all the things I love about my woman, all the things I just like about my woman, and all the things I just tolerate about my woman. And when you start balancing that stuff out, that really depends on how he'll react. Because if one of the things you absolutely love about your woman is all of a sudden taken away, yeah, he's going to look at her differently. Does that mean it's a deal breaker? Depends on the man.
Okay. What is something that, from a male's perspective, would probably be considered a deal breaker or would be a change that most men probably could not cope with?
First, prove him to her in the first place. And the first thing, once he got to know her, that he viewed as something, now that I know you, this other quality in you that I couldn't just see binds me to you, really makes me want you, makes me desire you, makes me love you even more. If both of those things change, that might be a deal breaker. If just one of those things change, there's probably going to have to be a conversation. Probably isn't a deal breaker, but it's probably going to be a conversation, because those were the two most prominent things that drew the man there and that he grew to love once he knew you. You can't take both of them away and just think it's cool because we got history together. History, one of the things you love, but it's probably not the top two.
Okay, so just to make sure that I'm hearing you right, so let's just say hypothetically, a man was physically attracted to his woman because of how she looked, and that changed, and then also maybe he was attracted to the fact that she knew how to keep the house and she took care of the house and she was very attentive to his needs, and let's say that changed. Maybe she gets a career or she started doing something other than, and now she's not as attentive to him as she once was. You're saying that might crush the relationship with those two changes happening. That might really put a weight on a relationship?
It's going to put a weight on it. Now, whether it's going to be a deal breaker or not probably depends on the conversation that's had and if some accommodations be made. Because, see, some people don't see a change in themselves as quick as somebody else who likes that quality in them.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. So I think that was a really good. I think that, so basically you men are willing to work with us for the most part. You're expecting us to change just as you change. And that as long as we're conversating and we're communicating and we're making sure that your needs are met, a lot of times us gaining weight or changing our careers or doing other things, that's not really too much of a problem as long as we're making sure that your needs are being met, the ones that we started out meeting, that we're still meeting them same needs in the end. Would that be accurate?
That's very close. I can't say it's 100% accurate, but it's very close, because this is kind of like a subject that has no real answer, because it depends on the man and it depends on the relationship that man has with his woman.
Okay.
You can't say there's a specific thing, because a woman could gain 50 pounds to a man, and that man could look at that woman and say, well, I always liked your body, but you were actually a little too slim before. Now you just look so voluptuous. I just like that even more.
Yes.
Because the woman with that little underweight, and all the weight seemed to go in all the right places as far as that man was concerned. So he's like even more enthralled with that. Where another woman could gain 50 pounds and she just looked all crazy, unhealthily out of shape. So you couldn't even say it was the amount of pounds. It's a difference in each circumstance. You got to evaluate it differently. That's why there's general statements you can make, but you can't really pigeonhole everybody into one category. It's individual with some nuances to it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. And I would agree. And I just want to say out loud, I just want to thank my husband, Mr. Parker, because I changed dramatically. Everything changed about me when it comes to the physical side of things, and he was so supportive. I love you, Mr. Parker. Thank you. But on another note, what happens if a woman changes, like whereas she was really reliant on a man and dependent on a man, but then something happens to whereas she starts to make more money and invest more into herself, to where she puts herself, for lack of a better way to put it, above him. Now she's making more money than he is, and she's doing more now. Do you think that can possibly be a deal breaker in a relationship?
It depends on, once she starts making more money, does she treat him differently? Does she talk to him differently?
Okay.
Because theoretically, money, if you're married, if you live together, money is coming into the household. It's going into account. It's our money, because you are all as a unit. So the fact that more is coming in, the source probably shouldn't really matter. That's when ego begins to be involved. And if ego is out of control, then people don't think rationally. They think emotionally. And that's the worst thing they can be for a relationship, when you start bringing too many raw emotions into it, because you can't even, logically reason stuff out because emotions are into it. Because that's the craziest thing in the world, to be mad that more money's coming into the household. To rationalize that. So it must be how it's being explained as to the relative, relationship of the man and woman, because the money shouldn't change it.
That's what you would think, right?
I would.
Where, like, when a woman has been, like, dependent on a man, as a man get accustomed to that, and it makes them feel some type of way, like a lot, if you have men out here that just, they like that. And so once that changes, it makes them feel some type of way, because they're not reliant on them as they once were. So I don't think it's about the money as much as it is being independent. You have men that struggle with independent women, especially if when you got with her, she was very dependent on you. And then all of a sudden now she's independent. She doesn't need you in the same way. That doesn't mean that she don't need you, because she needs you in other ways, in other aspects of the relationship, but she might not need you financially anymore, or maybe even emotional. You got some men that, pick their women up, make their women feel good. Now, say she starts to be able to give herself these things to where she doesn't have to look to that man to get these things anymore. Do you think that will have some type of effect on him?
Yeah, of course it's going to have an effect. The question is, can he make accommodations for that? Can he adapt? If he can, they'll be blissfully, happily in their new circumstances. If he can't, they're going to have problems. And if the problem is too big, that's why divorce courts are full in about every county that I know in this country.
You always say that. Okay, so with that being said, from the male's perspective, you out here with the men, you being around with the men. Have you ever had this conversation with one of your friends or someone that you know?
You mean where the woman starts making a lot more money than the man?
Right, or she's just not as dependent on him as she once was.
All the men that I know that I call friends of mine, it's not going to affect them at all in any way other than positively, because more money coming to the household. They're going to be able to adapt, probably adapt real quickly, and they don't care what anybody else says, because they're going to view those people as jealous haters, which they probably are.
Okay.
Who only exist to be able to try to, some sort of discord in somebody else's relationship, because they hate their own, but they can't let it go because they realize, hey, I'm lucky I got this person, so let me just sow a lot of hate in other people, if they'll let that hate seep in. But men who basically his egos are fragile enough to let more legitimate money come into the household, and they're upset because of what somebody else thinks about it, that's a problem that maybe requires some therapy. And luckily you got more money coming in the household, so you should be able to get a good therapist.
Okay. I know that's right. So when we speaking about money, the majority of the problem is coming from the outside, or how others view that, and maybe the pressure they're putting on a man. Okay. And I would agree with that. I can see that. What about emotionally? What if you had a woman that looked for you to build her up, but then all of a sudden she began to be able to sustain herself? Do the majority of the men look at that as a good thing, or do you see some of them feeling some type of way because they're not needed in this way anymore?
Same kind of man that's going to be appreciative of more legitimate money coming into the household from his woman is going to be just as appreciative that she does not need as much from him. That's less burden for him to carry. Okay. Awesome. So, there you have it, people. You have it. If you have the right man, I should say, he will be willing to grow with you and change as you change. And that's really good to know, because you have a lot of women that are afraid to grow, afraid to change, and that are fighting to keep themselves and their situations the same so that they can sustain a relationship. Now we know, honey, grow till you can't grow no more. Okay. So, Keith, did you have any closing remarks? Every 10 years, there's change. So clock 10 years from the time you meet your woman, 10 years in the future, there's changes. Hopefully, those changes are for the better. Hopefully, they're positive changes. Hopefully, you can see those changes as they're coming and fine-tune them to make sure that they don't really go awry. That if somebody's gaining weight, it doesn't become unhealthy weight. If somebody's got a fetish for spending a lot of money, that they can be, adapted to how much money that the household has. If a person has a dream that they want to fulfill, hopefully it's not a dream that devastates the family in terms of it takes too much money or it takes too much time, or basically after giving it some time, it doesn't begin to bear any fruit, but you still want to hang in there even if it takes 20 years, which might devastate the relationship. As long as you basically can be realistic and accommodating of the other person, hopefully whatever changes there are, you'll all still be able to stay together, love each other just as much.
Amen. I love that. I want you guys, if there's anything that we didn't touch bases on that you feel like you want to talk about or hear us talking about when it comes to this situation with your spouses changing and evolving in a sense to whereas it may sometimes put turmoil on the relationship or it can enhance the relationship, let us know. Comment in the comment section and let us know, because we would love to hear from you and we would love to talk about any topics that you may have as well. So, Keith, thank you for joining me today, and thank you, audience, for tuning in. Until next time. Bye.
Love you all.